I am Justina Okechukwu, and this is a warm welcome to Energy Frontiers edition for the week, proudly supported by the African Energy Chamber. As always, we begin with some energy news making the headlines from around the continent. Mali's electric utility provider, Energy du Mali, has announced that the government will mobilize 580 billion CFA francs to support the energy sector. The company said this on the sidelines of the just concluded First Energy Investors Fair in Mali, a framework set up to mobilize funding for Energy du Mali SA. The African Export-Import Bank says it has signed a €430 million framework agreement with Senegalese power company Nda Energies SA to finance the development of a 250 megawatt combined cycle gas turbine power plant and gas pipeline in the West African country of Senegal. A new report by the International Renewable Energy Agency, or IRENA, and Climate Policy Initiative shows that global investment in renewable energy reached a record high of $500 billion in 2022, while energy transition technologies hit a record high of $1.3 trillion. IRENA says governments and development partners need to ensure a more equitable flow of finance by recognizing different contexts and needs. Latest reports by the International Energy Forum and S&P Global Commodity Insights shows that oil and gas upstream capital expenditures increased by 39% in 2022 to $499 billion, but investment will need to increase to $640 billion in 2030 in order to ensure adequate supplies. The African Energy Chamber has extended its Invest in African Energy European Roadshow to Germany in order to bring together German and African energy investors. The roadshow was held on Thursday in Frankfurt to maximize energy investment partnerships between Africa and Europe's largest economy. Nigeria's Council on Privatization has approved the appointment of Mainstream Energy Solutions Limited as the preferred bidder among 11 other companies for the concession of the Zungeri hydroelectric power plant. African-focused privately owned exploration company Impact Oil and Gas has announced the launch of a multi-well drilling program in Namibia in order to access the hydrocarbon reserves available in Total Energy's large-scale Venus discovery, as well as the potential extension into adjacent blocks. And that was a snapshot of your energy news headlines. When we return, what is the future of Africa's gas market in the face of a global energy crisis? More on this in just a moment. Welcome back to the program. Pan-African investment research firm Hawilti recently released a new study on gas for Africa in partnership with the International Gas Union at the just concluded Egypt's 2023 summit. The report, which was endorsed by the African Energy Commission and the Africa Finance Corporation, argues for a pragmatic use of natural gas reserves to support a broad industrial and economic development of Africa in a way that is sustainable and enables a just energy transition. Here is an excerpt of my quick chat on this with Michael Vogel, Director and Head of Research at Hawilti. Take a listen. Michael, talk me through the key highlights of your latest Gas for Africa report for 2023.
All right. So I think the work we have done with the International Gas Union over the past 6 months is look at where the continent actually is in terms of gas adoption for energy access and for the energy transition. What we have, just to sum up the key takeaways is, a continent that remains extremely energy poor, and we'll speak about that in a minute. I do think a lot of people do not understand what energy poverty is. And then we look at the potential of gas in terms of gas-based industrialization, energy access, electricity production, decarbonization. We identify key barriers to development, whether it is finance, infrastructure, or policy, and then finally come up with key guiding principles that we think, if applied properly, could further unlock the potential of gas for socioeconomic development on the continent.
Now, having said that, so what's the role of natural gas in Africa's just energy transition?
All right. So first, when we speak about the just energy transition, is because we think everything needs to start with energy access, right? You do not, there's no reason to speak about an actual transition per se unless you actually start by having widespread energy and electricity access across the continent that you can actually decarbonize and expand in a sustainable way. So for us, we see gas playing several key roles and contributions, both at homes and in industries. One is obviously the development of gas-based industrialization and the growth of energy-intensive industries like steel and cement. Two is the generation of baseload electricity, especially in countries that do not have cleaner alternatives like hydropower or geothermal. Three is the displacement of coal and diesel in power, and the displacement of biomass, fuel wood, charcoal, and kerosene at home. And then finally, gas can also be the anchor for resilient and stable power systems that you can decarbonize in the future with hydrogen, carbon capture storage, and renewable gas.
Now, in what way should Africa ensure that there is a broader penetration of gas in the energy mix for economies?
I think one key figure to keep in mind is that gas represents on average 16 to 20% of the global energy mix, but on the continent it's only 5 to 7%. So most of the energy used in Africa remains largely dominated by traditional, polluting, and often expensive sources of energy, like again biomass, fuel wood, charcoal, diesel. And so if they're not imported at very expensive prices, then they're consumed with lots of damage for public health. So what we are saying is, a better adoption of gas is not just about bringing electricity, but it's also about developing an energy mix that's a lot more sustainable and modern and more affordable for everybody on the continent.
So, Michael, how can Africa maximize the huge potential in its vast gas deposits, and what do the numbers show?
So I think first, the numbers show that obviously most of the gas Africa produces remains largely exported. So the continent produces some 6% of the world's global gas supply, but consumes very little of it. With the exceptions of Libya and Egypt that actually manage to consume most of their gas locally, the rest of the continent exports it. So in countries like Mozambique and Nigeria, 80% of the gas that actually goes to market goes to overseas markets. In Angola, Cameroon, or Equatorial Guinea, it's over 60%. So what we are saying is, if you want to actually be serious about gas in Africa, you need to start reorienting some of those strategies towards the domestic market. There are several ways to do that, of course, but when you talk about domestic projects as opposed to export project, you come with a whole bunch of new challenges and barriers to development, such as access to finance, limited infrastructure, and some policy uncertainty that we think needs to be addressed as well. But finally, the benefits of gas locally, what people need to understand is it's not just about electricity production. It's about what you can do with gas in industry, transport, and households as well.
That was Michael Vogel, Director and Head of Research at Hawilti. In the meantime, stand by for an extract from IEA's latest updates of its 2023 Global Methane Tracker. Welcome back. I am Justina Okechukwu. Methane emissions remain stubbornly high in 2022, with the energy sector accounting for around 40% attributable to human activity and second only to agriculture. That's according to the International Energy Agency's annual methane gas tracker report released on Tuesday, which shows that less than 3% of the income accrued by oil and gas companies last year will be required to make the $100 billion investment in technologies needed to cut emissions. IEA's Executive Director Fatih Birol says even though some progress is being made, emissions are still far too high and not falling fast enough, as methane cuts are among the cheapest options to limit near-term global warming. Listen here.
Now, what do our numbers show in this year's global methane tracker? They show that there is some improvement in terms of methane emissions, but emissions are not falling fast enough, and not even close to that. And this is happening at a time when we have seen natural gas prices being at very high levels. And our new analysis based on this data shows that well over half of global methane emissions could be reduced at no net cost. Reducing these emissions saves money as well as saving the planet. So we can reduce the emissions by more than 50% at no net cost. I think in terms of economics, in terms of the fight against climate change, this is a very important area that has been identified by my colleagues. What about the investments to make this happen? Is the money available? Absolutely yes. We have recently showed our analysis that the global oil and gas industry last year, 2022, their total income was about $4 trillion. On average, on a normal year, the global oil and gas industry makes about $1.5 trillion, and it jumped to $4 trillion. And there's a lot of discussion in almost all the countries, within the companies, governments, companies, citizens, what to do with this huge amount of increase in the oil and gas income.
As the Executive Director mentioned, this is one of the key questions that we are going to be addressing in the upcoming report, looking at the role of the oil and gas industry towards COP28. But there is a lot that the investors can already be doing when discussing climate change and discussing alignment of oil and gas companies with net zero targets. Alignment is one, understanding what those companies are doing on the ground in terms of their investments, in terms of their investments into new technologies away from traditional operations. But really what is very, very important is that for every single oil and gas company, whether it's an international oil and gas company, a national oil and gas company, a small independent, is that their own emissions are absolutely as low as possible. They need to have this zero tolerance towards methane emissions. Tackling methane emissions is the most important thing that oil and gas companies can do to lower the emissions intensity of their own production. And if we have that pressure coming from investors in helping those companies reduce their emissions, lending to projects that will reduce those their own emissions, all of that will help move us on the right path towards getting that substantial reduction in the overall emissions intensity of oil and gas production.
Maybe I can take the question of if this is so cost effective, why is it not happening? Indeed, it's a great question. It's one we often spend some time discussing amongst ourselves here at the IEA. And what we come back to is that there is an information problem. So often a company that is emitting methane is not aware of the level of leaks, or it's not aware of the cost effectiveness of the abatement options. So we need to fill that information gap, and many of the things we've discussed today, particularly in terms of better monitoring technologies will help to do that. I think another important issue is that within any company, you've got competition for investment capital. So different parts of the company will be proposing different ways for companies to spend their money. And it's sometimes the case that a methane abatement initiative, won't get across the hurdle that is there within the company for investment. We were discussing this issue actually recently with the Methane Guiding Principles group, and one of the, in a sense, the solutions that came up is that this has to be an issue that's not just about the bottom line. You need to, make sure that when companies are taking those investment decisions, that the head of sustainability is around the table, or that there is due weight given to the reputational risks of a failure to act, both for the company itself and for the broader industry. And there are also cases where the entity that needs to invest is not necessarily the one that will benefit from the upside in terms of getting additional gas to market. So that's often the case when you have infrastructure. And in some cases, there is just a lack of infrastructure to get that gas to market. And there you have all sorts of local uses of captured gas, particularly captured flared gas, that can be quite important there. So we think that there are these different categories of reason why stuff doesn't happen, even though it's very cost effective. All of those problems can be resolved. And that's some of the things that we're working on together with different partners, is to make sure that we close those gaps.
A further analysis and figures of that report can be found on the IEA's website. And that's how we wrap up the package for you this week, and we thank everyone for joining in. Remember to follow Energy Frontiers on Frontier Africa Reports website, subscribe to our YouTube, and follow us across all our social media handles as indicated on the screen. I am Justina Okechukwu, and I'll be with you again next week.